Hello, everybody. My name's Ram Hellman. I'm a rising junior at Tufts University. This is Keeping Democracy Alive, episode 13, I believe. And got to do my shout out to Tufts Hillel and the Cummings Program for Holocaust and Genocide Education, as well as my supervisors, Lauren Bloom, Hannah Rich, and Pete Loeb, who have helped me throughout this whole process of putting together every interview, connecting with various people, and helping me edit things. So thank you. This episode, I'm really happy and excited to introduce K. Rashid Nuri. Mr. Nuri is the founder of Truly Living Well. He's been involved with agriculture and has been an advocate for new sustainable way of living for, I'd say, pretty much his whole life. And if not his whole life, at least since college. He was introduced to me by a previous speaker I had on here, Mr. Jeffrey Hicks, who's also interested in sustainable real estate. So there's this clear trend and interest that I have. But without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. Nuri introduce himself, tell us a little bit about him, and then we can start talking.
Yeah, well, greetings. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
I'm always very happy to wake up every day. And today I get a chance to talk with you. You're a very bright young man.
Thank you.
I've been, as you have said, I've been involved in agriculture for well over 50 years. First indication I had, as I look back, first inkling was when I ran for student body president back in 1965. One of the planks that I had in my platform was to install a fresh fruit and juice machine on campus next to the soda and candy. And that presaged, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was presaging the work that I've been involved in since that time.
Yeah.
My work has taken me around the world. I've lived overseas many years. I've worked in 36 countries. There are a lot more countries in the world, but I've been able to see and experience local food economies in Asia, Africa, and Europe and America.
I think that's actually a very good start. I know that with my father, as we talked about briefly before recording, my dad is from the Netherlands, and he attributes a lot of the reason that he's interested in sustainable real estate to this exposure to European ways of life, specifically like the whole idea of living in a village, being around farms, interacting with people who are growing your food. So yeah, how would you say that how would you say that going around the world and seeing all these other countries influenced you? And I guess that's my first question. My second question is, were you already interested in urban agriculture prior to all your travels, or was that a result of being interested in urban agriculture? I might have just said the same thing.
It's an interesting question. You got two different questions there.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about local food, most particularly and specifically in Asia and Africa. The connection between those regions and Europe has primarily been colonial. And so that's a different dynamic. The support that Asia and Africa gave to make Europe the empire that it has been for the last 500-600 years. All right, so say that. But food on the ground, local food economies, I saw that in those countries. So my work as an undergraduate, I was interested in national development, how you build countries. I studied the men and women who created the post-colonial world. And I was conceived in 1947, and that's when India got its independence and ended the began the dissolution of the universal colonial relationships that existed in the world. So as an undergrad, I studied the men and women, and I had being a child of the 60s, we were talking Black Power, nation building. In order to call yourself a nation or a father or a community, you got to be able to feed, clothe, and shelter your people. And I wanted a practical skill, and I didn't know if I was trying to decide if I wanted to be a printer for information or carpenter to build. And I was sitting in the library writing a paper on theory and practice comparing the work of Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya and Julius Nyerere in Tanzania. Each of those had a diametrically opposed modality for developing their countries. And I read a book by Tom Mboya, who was the finance minister under Kenyatta in Kenya. And he said, with all the technology available in the world today, there's no reason we could not chemically synthesize enough food to feed all the people. And I was like, whoa, these chemicals, I was interested in health and nutrition and realized it was these chemicals that were killing people. And that needed to be remedied. And then God spoke to me. It was such a vivid experience, and told me to learn everything about food from the seed to the table and to do it experientially. So the very first professional work that I did, I had already been introduced to gardening, but the very first professional work that I did when I got out of school was to work with children in elementary schools and junior high, installing community gardens around. This was out in San Diego. And we also had an urban farm, a large 5-acre farm that we developed. So that is the essence of what I did with Truly Living Well here at this end of my career. So in that sense, I've been involved with small farms and urban agriculture one way or another, as well as large farms. As we talk, some of those experiences will probably come out. But one time I had 13,000 acres of land that I was responsible for. I worked with food co-ops. I worked for a company named Cargill, which is one of the largest privately owned companies. And they control so much of how food is moved around the world and food processing. So I've had a chance to, go ahead.
And that all came prior to your travels?
Oh, no. Well, the travels, as a young man, I moved every 3 years around this country.
Okay.
But the overseas travels were paid for by Cargill.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the first job I did with them was an economic analysis. Then I came south, and I ran a soybean processing plant up in Hall County. Then I went overseas. I went to Southeast Asia as a regional investment manager. Then I opened up Nigeria for the company. They had never been there before. And going to Africa took me 18 years to get there. But that was a interest and desire I had for a very long time.
Yeah. Would you say that you got, what kind of pushed you out of the company? Like, what pushed you to work on your own? Were you feeling as if the company wasn't really aligned with your interest? Was it that the travels opened your eyes up to something more that you wanted to work on? What was it?
No, when I went to Cargill,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how food is moved around the world. Okay. And they do that better than anybody else. Leaving Cargill, my interests clashed. They promised me equity money to do the development, and they really weren't prepared to pay the price it would cost to do. This is in Nigeria. Nigeria is the richest country in Africa. People would argue that South Africa may be generating more revenues that are coming to other parts of the world. But Nigeria has the most people, is prime resources, everything you need to build a great nation. It just hasn't been timed right yet. And I wanted to do added value processing. We went in there and I traded cacao, rubber, sugar, maize, sorghum. We had cotton gins. So, that was the book. I wrote a book on the subject out of Singapore when I was based in Singapore, and said that the way to get involved in Africa was to trade initially and then get involved with added value processing. And they weren't prepared to support that. And I had conflicts with my bosses because I didn't feel the commitments, that the promises were not kept. And as an advocate, they quite frankly, they thought I went native.
So what was the transition like after leaving them and starting to think about your own personal desires more? What occurred in those few years?
Well, these are some very interesting questions, Jeremy. So this proves how bright I think you are.
Thank you.
I didn't go. I took some time off for my spiritual practice. Spiritual disciplines were improved with my spiritual guide. I went and lived with him, with my family, for about a year. When I left there, I went to work. The one thing I had not done is work with the government and to learn in the role that government plays in agricultural development. So I was in the first Clinton administration at the Farm Service Agency, what is now the Farm Service Agency, and that gave me a chance to see what was going on in a whole lot of ways. And the thing that I found really, as I look back on my work, is the progression. Everything, each job that a new activity I got involved in succeeded appropriately. So I was in the first administration that got me to understand how the government works and the role government played. And then we went on from there. So it was I did some, when I left the government, the next major project I did was out in California, back to California, doing some urban agriculture there. And then I went to Africa again, in Ghana. And then when I left Ghana is when I started truly living well. And that's been, 15, 16 years now.
So you would agree with my dad's kind of, or I guess my assessment of my dad's situation, that being exposed to I don't think it has to necessarily be overseas, because South America isn't technically overseas, but other countries and the way that they farm and live was an influence in your life. And
major.
Yeah.
So that goes back. I mean, I've always done that, studying the men and women who created the post-colonial, who led the post-colonial world, and the reconstruction of the countries was very significant. Okay, most Americans, United States is surrounded by the two largest bodies of water on the planet. We're highly isolated. Americans can only speak one language. We have not had regard for people around the world. And I guarantee you, every map that you looked at when you were growing up and going through school had the United States in the very center of it. And that's not the world. Okay? The world doesn't revolve around the US. There's a whole lot else that's going on, but we don't, as a nation, not taught to see what other people do and how they have conducted their affairs. So looking outside and studying these folks gave me the opportunity to understand other ways of thinking rather than that which we've been indoctrinated in our school.
So the big question is, why urban agriculture? What is the importance of urban agriculture?
Okay.
The big question.
Yeah. Humankind, for all of its existence, has lived within walking distance of where their food is produced. You still find this in Africa. You still find this in Asia. And the agricultural system in the United States has become so industrialized, so oil-based, that we've become disconnected from the soil because all wealth, all health, all life begins and ends with the soil. And we just become totally disconnected. Our foods are processed. We don't eat healthy food. We got a lot of, I tell people, when you go to the grocery store, shop around the periphery where you can get fresh fruits. Well, I don't care how you eat, but you can get the best food is around the outside. All that stuff that's in the middle, we shouldn't eat most of it. If it has more than 5 ingredients, it's not food. If you can't pronounce, you should read the labels. If you don't know what it is, don't eat it. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it because it's not food. And that's not true. You know, you go to a market, fresh market, there's no labels on a tomato telling you what's in the tomato. It's just says, this is a tomato. Or this is an orange. You don't need to see all those ingredients. And we end up with processed foods that are substitutes for the real food that God has given us. And I think that's a mistake. I mean, I just forgot your question. What was your question?
Just what is the importance of urban agriculture?
Get you closer to the food, closer to earth, closer to the creation. You know, what it's magnificent. You look at the trees. Got a bunch of them right over there. There's nobody going out there measuring the soil to grow those trees or giving it fertilizer to grow. We live here in Georgia, and the Atlanta metropolitan area is the greenest part of the country. The United States is more in terms of trees and open space. But you don't have to test them. The trees grow, they drop their leaves, feeds the soil, and it's just a wheel of life, a wheel of health that naturally takes place. And I think it's so important for us to as much as possible, to emulate nature, emulate the creation in the conduct of our business. Here's an interesting thing. You remember probably about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had that huge explosion in Lebanon, in Beirut. You recall that? You may not. Many people missed it. They blew up that town and disrupted it. And what they had ammonium nitrate, gunpowder stored in those silos at the port. And most of us have no idea that gunpowder is the principal fertilizer that goes into the crops that are grown in this country. And how that happened coming out of the Second World War, the munitions manufacturers, and war is very good for the economies. They wanted to continue to make money, so they decided, as part of the agribusiness schemes that were developed by and I don't know how much detail you want to get in this.
No, I'm really enjoying listening to you. Keep going.
The whole concept of agribusiness was developed by Ray Goldberg and the Rockefeller Foundation at the Harvard Business School back in the early 50s. And it was out of those policies that were developed at the end of the Roosevelt administration, end of the war, coming into the future, where how to use food as a weapon. What's been taught by the Department of Agriculture, even our current Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, who is from he'd been the governor of Georgia at one point. He says that, you know, get big or get out. And that hurts us. The food, most of the food people eat travels 1,500, 2,000 miles on average before it gets to their table. And that doesn't work. And that contradiction was pointed out by this confinement that we're on now, still a part of, because if you, at the beginning of this in March, you saw farmers, big farmers turning food into the ground. That make no sense. When you got hungry people who need food, can't get it, and the farmers are putting it in the ground. So this spring, Big Ag lost money, except for the subsidies that the president gave them, where small farms and urban agriculture through local farmers market, they've had the best year they've ever had, because they're nearer to the people than the Big Ag folks. The matrix that had Big Ag feeding this country broke down, didn't work. So now they've skipped over, they've figured out how to get the food from the big growers and then put it in boxes that they can deliver to people. So a lot of folk now are getting meals in a box coming from Big Ag. But the small farmers and the urban agriculturists have done very, very well. You can't get it, if you don't grow it in yourself, the freshest food you're gonna get it's going to come from a farmer's market where that food is maximum 48 hours out of the ground before you have an opportunity to get it. And
Yeah.
most often it's less time.
Yeah. Wow, there's so many different directions that this conversation can go. I'd say I want to back up and talk about truly living well. Can you tell me and the listeners more about that and what your intentions and goals are with it?
Well, as I said, I'm the founder, but I don't run it anymore.
Okay.
I stepped down 2 years ago as the CEO.
Okay.
I get credited quite often with being the godfather or the grandfather of urban agriculture here in Atlanta. And you know those titles.
That's a pretty cool title to be given.
It is said quite often. I'm not impressed, but I have one of the things you learn as you get older is just say thank you.
Yeah.
Just thank you. But truly living well was I advocated for the urban agriculture. I have twice now built the largest farm. Me and my colleagues built. I led the construction of the largest urban farms in Atlanta 2 times, and the first time in particular gave people an opportunity to understand. We proved the concept. We demonstrated the efficacy of the urban agriculture. We were right downtown, the old 4th Ward. You could see the farm from the freeway and all the skyscrapers. If you looked over to the west, you could see that farm right there.
Yeah.
So that gave inspiration, demonstrated techniques, and I pray that I was able to make a contribution. One of the things that I've taught is you drop it's amazing how much you can get done, how much you can accomplish if you're not concerned with who gets the credit. And I often describe my work as throwing a pebble in the pond. Now, those around where the entry is, they'll know what the origin is. By the time those ripples and waves get to the shore, folks have no idea what the origin was. And I'm satisfied with that. But what we were able to do is show Atlanta and other parts of the country we had an involvement with, that what is possible, how it can work. And I'm very pleased to have been a part of that.
Yeah, from your website, what I liked how you said, let me back up. I guess it's not your website anymore. These might not be your words, but Truly Living Well's website, it said, since its inception, Truly Living Well has used its expertise to demonstrate how food can be a bridge across diverse cultures, backgrounds, and experiences, which I like. I think you're talking a lot about the impact that urban agriculture can have on our food sources. But there's also this whole other side that you haven't even talked about yet, about how it can bring people and communities together. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Let me just throw it. I have a new website, the Nuri Group.
Nuri Group. I'm gonna get there.
Okay, cool. The subtext, Truly Living Well, Center for Natural Urban Agriculture. We grow food, we grow people, and we grow community. And I think that was the shortcut to explain all the things that you're doing. When you see, we created oases, spiritual oases, plays in the community, all the work that we've done around this urban agriculture. Real estate is improved, crime has gone down, drug traffic would stop. The police always commended the work that we have done because we created this place that was safe. It was peaceful, where people could come, could talk to one another, and not because food is common for everybody.
Yeah.
You have everybody, even a breatharian at some point will have to come down and go get some food. And so it transcends sectarian rivalry, politics. Food is a common denominator for everybody. And I contend that there are few things more intimate than sitting down and having a meal with somebody. You really want to know a person, sit down and share a meal, have a meal. And that's where sharing food is where peace treaties are made and business deals are made. It is a common denominator. So yes, we were able to build community at our sites. You know, you got Black people, white people, Asian people, Latinx people, gay people, straight people. Everybody came through there, and we're able to talk with one another and have the opportunity to meet and greet one another around fresh food. I contend that urban agriculture is a solution to any problem that you're going to find in an urban area. You can anything. It doesn't solve them all, but it makes a contribution. The children can come out there and in addition to getting quality food, to get a chance to grow food, it's an education process. You can teach them math, science, sociology, English. All of that can happen in the garden. People come together, they learn to work with one another. We would have work days, Martin Luther King's birthday celebrations. We would have 300 to 500 people out every year. Corporations, when they want to do their social work, what do you call it? I just lost the words. When they want to do this community service, we'd come out to the farm and do work to help build it up. So absolutely, unequivocally, that these things we're describing, we grew the food and showed that could be done. The first site down the old Fourth Ward, half of it was on a concrete slab, the footprint from the housing project that had been there. We grow people, we had training program, to grow food and show that it can be done in the city. And the reason I mentioned the cement pads, growing raised beds, is to show, that's my thought. Most people, raised beds work well because it minimizes the weeds. For elders, it's closer to get to it, and you're growing up instead of growing down, which is harder work. Given a preference, I would grow in the ground, but I don't recommend that for a lot of people. Growing the people, we had training programs. We have all kinds, 6-month training programs, 3-month weekend, Saturday morning training classes. So we're able to show people and teach people the techniques growing the food. So that's growing the food, people, and the community was what I was describing, how we bring the community together around the concepts of food. And
so how does the Nuri Group separate itself from truly living well? What's the difference?
I'm not running a farm. Okay. I'm still doing same kind of advocacy work, even more so than I was doing as the CEO of Truly Living Well. I was out there in the fields and creating building the business. But I decided that it's time for some young people to take it over. Just as even running this country, it's time for some young people to run this joint, not the old men who are running around here now. Turning that over so that they can do that work and step aside. If you read my book, I describe the men and women whose shoulders I've stood on.
Say the title of your book.
Oh, the book.
And we'll put a little link below.
Yeah. The title of the book is Growing Out Loud, Journey of a Food Revolutionary. But in there, I list the books that I've read and the men and women who wrote them and whose shoulders I have stood on as I've done my work. Because we all have to pay homage to the ancestors. And if to those who find the work that I've accomplished satisfactory, I have to acknowledge those shoulders. And my attitude is that the young people, if they who say that they're standing on my shoulders, that means they should see even further than I can see about where to go and how to do it and be able to add to whatever legacy I have established to build the future. Because I think all of us should be engaged. What's important, and we should engage in creating the world that we want to see our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren live in. Being in the moment, but another way of saying that is think global, but act local. So the world that I want to see for the future, I have to work on that today and not wait till I get there. So I hope that that we've been able to establish a foundation, and that you young people, okay, can take this thing even further than us old folks have.
So on your website with the Nuri Group, you have a huge title, and you talk about it called the New American City. You want to talk a little bit about that? I know it's kind of, I know it could be a little bit repetitive of what we've talked about, but I think there's a little bit more to the New American City than what we've already said.
Yeah, well, stop and think. At the turn of the 20th century, 85% of Americans lived in rural areas. That's changed now. 82% of Americans now live in urban areas. We've become so distant from our food. We're not connected to it. You know, yeah, you're right. A little bit of it is repetitive, but I think the New American City, I'd like to see us grow food and create community wherever we are. I tell folk, grow food in your front yard, your backyard, your patios, your balcony, in the kitchen window. We grow something so that you have a connection back to the sources of your creation. And the cost of the food that we eat now is just so extraordinarily high, because we have to pay a major proportion of the cost of food is the transportation to get it from where it is to where you are. And it's not working, it's broken down. What you're getting is garbage, hybridized food, the GMO foods, and all those are causing dis-ease in the society. You can go back when they started so I advocate for a pre-industrial, regenerative agricultural system based around a local food economy. When I got to Atlanta, you had trouble finding a farmer's market. Now there's one every day somewhere in town. And I think that's good, and it's going to continue to grow. So it's no longer a local food movement. The paradigm has shifted, and it's just a question of scaling it up so that we're able to feed more people, help more people, and it comes from a local base, and I think that's important.
Talk to me a little bit. What was that?
That makes sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I've already learned so much, and that's kind of my intention with each person I talk to is just to learn from them. But can you tell me a little bit more about your book?
Well, the book, thank you for asking. The book is a polemic. I'm giving you my opinions on it. I think one of the worst things we do too often is shoot on people. You should do this and you should do that. I don't do that. But I give you my opinions, polemic, and it's also a tutorial teaching people things about agriculture and how the food systems work, how it's connected, that they may not have known. And all of that is wrapped around an autobiographical theme. So I'm telling you, I'm gonna give you my personal history, but in my opinions throughout that, as well as I already said, that connecting those dots. One of the things that I've learned in my leadership style is to give people time, enough and space to learn from their mistakes, or they can save time and learn from mine. And so I outlined what I saw as my mistakes, how things could have been done differently, and primarily the lessons that I have learned from each stage of my life. And Growing Out Loud, book's available on my website, Nuri Group.
What would you say for someone who might not have the time to read your whole book? What would you say one key takeaway is from the book? As in, what's one mistake people should know about
eating all that garbage food that's out there?
Yeah,
that's the big, because it's killing. There's a straight line in health and a big spike in 1996 of dis-ease, in American society, and it begins with the food that putting in their body. You put garbage in, garbage comes out. That's why people are sick. All of Americans are obese, and just have so many endemic diseases that are, I think that's the right word, that can be avoided, but if they had quality food.
Yeah. And we're getting to the end, but
wow, it's going by quick. We're near the end already.
Yeah, it's already been around 37 minutes approximately.
Wow. Well, I've enjoyed this.
I have too, but we're not done yet. We're not done. I was wondering. I mean, Truly Living Well started in 2006.
Actually, it was conceived in 2005. Go ahead.
2005. You said you were born in 1942, so you were already
48.
1948. Excuse me. You're already done with college in 1970.
Yeah, I was class of 70.
So you've kind of been on this wave of urban agriculture and reimagining our food systems for almost 50 years, right? What has been holding us as an American society, as an American country, back from realizing the importance of changing? Like, what has that been? Why haven't we changed? What's been getting in the way? Is it money? Is it
No, it's not. No, it's knowledge. And the information has been kept from us in a lot of ways. The capitalist system is built on the oppression of other people, suppression of ideas, and the accumulation of wealth amongst an oligopoly of folks who control production, distribution, and exchange of all commodities on the planet. And so in order to get it, you got to step outside of the system and be able to look at it. And not a lot of people are willing to do that because we are propagandized so strong. With the message of if I have enough money, no, it's not even money. If I have the resources and the wherewithal to pitch a specific idea, it's going to convince people. They're going to go for it. All right. So big ag, which is all the food and food processors, excuse me. Here's just what I'll just give you one example.
Yeah.
Back in the 60s and the 70s, the oilseed processors convinced folks that so-called vegetable oil was the best oil for us to eat. And so everybody now, I can remember telling my mama back in the early 70s, Mom, if the oil that you're using is solid at room temperature, you shouldn't use it, right? Because it's going to clog your arteries. And that's just a lie. That's not true at all. In fact, these hydrogenated oils and the saturated fats that you get from soybean oil, canola oil is not even real. It's invented something. Corn oil, those things are the ones that are sticking to your arteries, right? The oils that pass through and lubricate the body are coconut oil. Let me be clear, not the stuff that's coming off of some of these plantations, but if you go out in the backyard and get some palm oil, the animal fats, they are, and I know this is would be received as controversial because of what we've been told, what we've been taught. But those natural oils is what God created, not what comes out of a factory. So it's got to be the best for us. And another example, just a small one, I got lots of, when I was coming up, when I was your age, it took 12 to 14 weeks to grow a chicken. Now they do it in 6. How they gonna make that, and they can call that advances because all the chemicals that go into the process of growing a chicken. They can get it done in 6 weeks rather than 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Mm. Mm.
And so it's a political agenda that our country has in order to lift up big corporations in order to maintain our status as the wealthiest country in the world.
Sure, you hit it. All that is discussed in much more detail in the book.
Hmm. All right, final question, Mr. Nuri. Something I like to ask everyone. I try and like make it fit the conversation though. Um, I like to ask people how a listener can get involved, or what a takeaway should be for a listener. Um, but I like the how can someone get involved. I mean, like you said, 82% of Americans live in urban landscapes now. Um, I'm assuming that that number significantly rises amongst the listeners of this podcast series thing. Probably to about 99% of everyone listening to this is living in an urban area. Um,
Hmm.
what what should they be doing? How can they live a life that is more um, yeah, I don't know where I'm getting at that. Like, how can they make it? How can they live a life that is more um, aware of the actions that they are taking, how they're impacting the environment, what they're putting into their body? What are the steps that they can take in order to not only help themselves but help everyone they know?
Study, education, knowledge. And knowledge is the basis of so much. Not just take things for granted. If this conversation that you and I have had make you say, "Oh, wow, let me go check that out."
Yeah,
And I tell people all the time, and nothing that I've said that anyone should take as a gospel. Go check it out. All right. And find out for yourself if what I've said is correct or connects up to other information that you may have. But you have to, if one becomes aware, one has to study. And that's anything. I mean, if you want to be a good cook, you got to study the subject. You have to practice it, get involved with it, finding ways outlets for you to exercise the new knowledge. And in the household, if mom or dad, whoever's doing the cooking, comes up with a new recipe, try it. And then you even have to perfect that recipe over time. It's not going to, sometimes it'd be great and sometimes it may not be, but you keep working at it till it gets better. And I tell all my audiences, grow something wherever you are, front yard, backyard, kitchen box window. You can just grow some herbs, 5-gallon bucket you can put out and put a tomato plant in there and feed yourself. Because the quality of the food that we are able to produce for ourselves or that is done locally is far more nutritious and tasty than the stuff that you get at the big box stores. So study.
I like it. All right, Mr. Nuri, thank you for talking.
All right, Rem, it's been a pleasure. It's a wonderful way to start the first day of the month.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. This was episode 13 with Mr. Nuri.
Peace be unto you.
You as well.